Good afternoon, AICon. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much to all the organizers. I hail from Toronto, Canada. I've got family heritage both here in Nova Scotia as well as Northern Ireland, so this is really speaking to me. Today I want to talk about the open source opportunity for Canadian prosperity and, yes, Canadian sovereignty and digital independence to influence the tech stack and actually create these market opportunities and use some research data that we created at the Linux Foundation to help advance these conversations through empirical insights. So a quick word about the Linux Foundation. If you're not familiar with the Linux Foundation, we've been around for close to 30 years. We are the largest open source nonprofit in the world. We host more than 1,000 openly governed technology projects. We are supported by 2,000 members from companies all over the world who come together and co-create and co-govern the software that our entire world relies on. And it gives them a say in the technical direction of the projects that their companies are taking a dependency on and that their internal operations, their operational technologies, their internal systems also rely on. And I've been at the Linux Foundation for the past 5 years, and my role at the foundation is to create empirical insights, quantitative and qualitative methodologies that measure the impact of open source technologies within industries and within technology domains. What are the trends with respect to adoption? Which industries are advanced in their use of open source software, as well as who's contributing, who's highly engaged. And so please do explore all of these reports. They are all free. They're all published under Creative Commons license, and they will help you advance discussions around the use and contribution of open source software in your organization. So if you take anything away from my message today, this is the first thing I want you to remember. That by championing open source architectures, Canada has a significant opportunity to move from a consumer of someone else's technology to an influencer in our own digital future. That is the opportunity that open source creates. We can build our own technology stacks. We simply need to rethink our procurement practices, and we need practitioners who can help connect the glue between open source software and commercial products and intellectual property. So here's some data to show why this is the case. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Linux kernel, the Linux kernel turns 35 years this year. It was an open source hobby project by a Finnish computer scientist named Linus Torvalds. In August of 1991, Linus released the Linux kernel project to the world, thinking it would be no big deal. I'm here to tell you it's a really, really big deal. It is the most consequential open source software in the world, and it runs everything. Just a few examples. It powers 4 billion Android devices, enabling a company like Samsung to have a flagship commercial product in their mobile phone. It powers 200 million servers and 100% of the world's supercomputers. It powers 30 million Chromebooks a year over the past 10 years. These, by the way, are rounding errors. Let's talk about 5G connectivity and the whole networking industry. Even in iPhones, Apple's 5G modem has firmware that runs Linux. So Linux has found its way into Apple products quite effectively. In terms of the embedded space, our home appliances, washing machines, dishwashers, televisions, industrial infrastructure like air traffic control systems, wind turbines, the stock markets, all that stuff, that is running on Linux. Satellites, EV charging stations, your car, unless you're driving a Tesla, a Chrysler, or a GM, your car runs on a piece of software called automotive grade Linux. It is the computer in your car. It's a fork of Linux designed for automotive hardware. And my favorite example is the automated cow milking machine. Yes, this too runs on Linux. What's my point? A little hobby project, a piece of open source software has enabled innovation and commercialization on a worldwide scale, so much so that it underpins the global infrastructure that our entire economies rely on. And that's why 355 global corporations contribute hundreds of developers to work on the Linux operating system every year. We didn't get here alone. It took mass collaboration at scale. By the way, the second invention from Linus Torvalds that has changed the world of software development is this project called Git, which you might know in GitHub or GitLab. It allows for version control, his second gift to the world. So think about Linux when you think about how innovation, the power of innovation at scale. And it's not just operating systems. Every era of computing has been built on open architecture, open source infrastructure, cloud native. In 2015, Google contributed the Kubernetes project to be hosted by the Linux Foundation. From there, we host 230 unique cloud native projects that hundreds of companies work on, take dependencies on, build products on. That's the opportunity. Now we're in the AI era. We've got AI native projects. PyTorch has trained 80% of AI models. And now we're in the agentic era. We've got numerous critical projects for agentic AI we host at the Linux Foundation for open governance. 120 million downloads of the MCP project, connecting agents to APIs. Pretty significant stuff. This is the innovation pattern. This is how it happens. And the world's most successful companies are part of this transformation. They're leveraging open source software to create world-class products. I want to move to a study that we did specifically on the opportunity for open source AI in Canada, looking at both Canada's strengths and our limitations, showing which industries in Canada are leading and lagging in AI adoption, and then looking to see where open source AI fits into this equation. So let's jump in. As Sean described, and I'm sure other people here throughout yesterday, unfortunately I couldn't attend yesterday, have mentioned the fact that Canada has had a significant leadership role in terms of AI incubation, AI research leadership. That is unequivocal. The fact that the Scale AI Supercluster was responsible at the federal level for $248 million in investment, $58 million from the province of Quebec, matched funding from the private sector to create world-class think tanks, the Vector Institute in Toronto, Mila in Montreal, and vibrant AI innovation communities. That has been fantastic. Unfortunately, Canadian organizations find themselves still in the crawl and walk phase. So we have not been able to move from the lab to the marketplace. And that's really holding us back. And it's a shame because according to the Conference Board of Canada, AI is Canada's race to lose. But the story's not over yet, and there's a path to help us close that gap. I do want to shout out the Canadian financial services industry, which has shown an incredible leadership position in terms of AI adoption and open source collaboration, recognized by evident AI industry reports. RBC, BMO, and most recently TD Bank are really stepping up on their AI innovation and collaborating significantly, taking significant leadership roles in a global open source community with respect to financial services. They're doing great. Banks don't do anything that doesn't have an ROI attached to it. They're there because it pays to be there. They get benefit from it. They're not there for fun. It's not a volunteer activity. They see the economic value by collaborating in global technology forums like the FinTech Open Source Foundation, one of our financial services vertical communities at the Linux Foundation. It also goes without saying that Canada's energy sector is poised to power the AI revolution. But what I want for Canada is not for us to be an exporter of raw materials and energy to let everyone else run their systems. We have every opportunity to be a commercial leader and leverage all these phenomenal resources, both talent and energy, to create world-class products. Why is open source AI so important? Well, the reason that Linux is the most consequential piece of open source software, and same holds true for all other pieces of open source software, is that it's free. It's free, it's cheap, it's cost effective to use. And that allows it to proliferate certainly among startups and small businesses. They're really, really great adopters of open source software. Lower costs, faster time to market, radical transparency and trust. And if we embrace this opportunity for using open source AI models, we can help bridge this commercialization gap. So that's the pathway for Canadian enterprises. If you're in a business that is helping bridge the commercialization, you're in the right business. That's a great business to be in. We need more of that. That is the magic formula to go from lab to commercial product. Help organizations modernize their systems, help them break out of vendor contracts, and change our procurement practices. Let's get the experts in here to leverage the open source stacks, bring models into our own environments, train them with our own data. Which brings me to open models. A colleague of mine, Frank Nagel, who also leads research in open source at MIT, recently conducted a study about the global opportunity cost of not using open source AI models. He values that at $25 billion worldwide. It's just easier to phone up Microsoft or somebody else. It's the reason why folks were not quick to adopt Linux in the early stages. Who do you call when something goes wrong? That's basically the challenge. There's a big opportunity cost that we're missing out on. So leveling up on how we leverage open source AI models is the real opportunity. Bring the models into your own environment. They can be safe and secure there. And then we run inference workloads with our own data and create more bespoke products. So here's the opportunity. Fine-tune. Represent Canadian multiculturalism. Represent Canadian English, Canadian French, Canadian regulatory dynamics for securities, for healthcare, and so on. And create products that solve Canadian consumer challenges, or make products that are designed for somewhere else in the world that truly represent the needs of that end user in that jurisdiction. It's simply a matter of training. The Linux Foundation is not the only organization that subscribes to this point of view about the use of open source AI to build influence and to build digital independence and to build digital sovereignty. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to contribute to a report led by the Tony Blair Institute in the United Kingdom. And what do you know? Resonating very much with Sean Mullen's talk, this was all about how open source can build influence in the age of AI for middle powers like Canada and the United Kingdom. So experts agree, this is not just a Linux Foundation thing. This is a real opportunity for middle powers. This is a great report for you to check out. I want to talk now to our current use of AI and how effective we are in terms of adopting it, maybe what we can do a little bit better. When asked how effectively we're doing in managing security where AI adoption is concerned, the short answer is we're not doing super well. This is a major gap. A recent study that we conducted on the state of technical talent worldwide exposed a capability gaps. This is not just Canada. Most organizations are experiencing this capability gap around AI security. This is a real problem. We're kind of winging it, connecting AI systems and exposing our organizations to all kinds of risk. And we're also reintroducing potential vulnerabilities if we're not carefully managing our ingress of code. Next up, we do not have essential safeguards in place. So a cautious approach, slow rolling this stuff in your organization, a really good idea. We don't have essential safeguards. We gathered a community together in San Francisco in February, folks from Anthropic and OpenAI and Google and Microsoft, all world's tech companies came together to have a frank conversation under Chatham House rule about what is going on with respect to agentification of the enterprise. And the total absence of safeguards was a huge alarm bell. So that's what this data point's from. I also want to bring you to a piece of European legislation that could impact Canadian businesses, especially if your organization is shipping products with digital elements into the European marketplace. There's a regulation called the Cyber Resilience Act. The CRA doesn't stand for Canada Revenue Agency, but you should know about it. The Cyber Resilience Act is coming into full force in 2027. Shockingly, 72% of organizations in the US and Canada haven't heard about it. No idea it's coming. It's a security risk management issue. The costs are huge, 15 million euros or 2% of turnover, whichever is higher, for companies that are not meeting the essential requirements of the Cyber Resilience Act. I say this because in contributing to communities that prioritize cybersecurity best practices, companies can get a heads up on this stuff and start taking the necessary steps internally to mitigate regulatory risk and severe regulatory penalties. So if you're shipping internationally to Europe, you're shipping anything digital, CRA, this is the other CRA that you want to take note of. The second thing I want you to go home with today is there is more value captured by contributing to open source communities than simply using open source code. The chopping wood, the carrying water, has significant ROI attached to it. I just gave an example of the CRA, simply being aware of a new regulation coming down the pike by way of participating in open source forums. These are free working groups, by the way. Information about what your organization needs to be aware of. That's the ROI, that's the opportunity. So a couple more data points on why contribution to open source is really important, not just usage. Let's talk about hiring and retention. Technologists love to work on open source projects and within the open source ecosystem. It makes finding them easier, hiring them easier, and then retaining them more effective. So your talent equation and open source strategy need to be pretty closely aligned. Secondly, for your technologists who are stepping up and contributing to open source communities in different ways, and sorry, let me describe the different types of contribution. There are three major types of contribution to open source. One is you contribute code. You can write lines of code upstream to a project and say, this is a feature that I want to see in this repo because my company wants to go in that direction. So you can contribute code. You can also contribute entire projects to be hosted and neutrally governed by Linux Foundation. We've seen that time and time again from Meta and from Google, and even banks are starting to contribute open source projects outright. It's just, they're non-competitive, but they're essential. And then the third type of contribution is code, two types of code. Second type is financial contribution, whether you're supporting full-time employees to work on open source projects, or you're making a financial contribution in terms of some kind of sponsorship. Maybe it's a membership in a foundation, sponsorship an event. Or third is just volunteering. Maybe you run an advisory board. Maybe you're not allowed to contribute to open source projects at your company, but you can serve in a volunteer capacity, you can speak at an event, you can contribute to research, and so on. Those are the three essential types of contribution. When you contribute, your problems get solved faster. And in this instance, since organizations first started to contribute upstream to open source projects, their issues are getting resolved a lot faster. They now have a reputation. Bugs are getting fixed faster. They're establishing a reputation from their effort, and things are just moving along swimmingly. Overall, across all the engagement types, there is an ROI of 2 to 5x by participating in open source communities in those three contexts. 2 to 5x. The more you contribute, the higher your ROI. One of the opportunities to contribute is in research. This is my portfolio at the Linux Foundation. We would love to do another study on Canada. We'd love to better understand the state of open source in Canada. How prolific is open source software in Canadian organizations? Are Canadian companies contributing back upstream? Are they contributing in other contexts? Are they getting the ROI that they should? Are they using open source code to create sovereign, independent systems? So if this speaks to you, get in touch. We'd love to have you involved. So finally, if we want to catch up, if we want to help close the commercialization gap and realize the opportunities for innovation and commercialization, we do have to collaborate. We need to innovate locally to create digitally independent, sovereign systems, but we must collaborate globally. Not all the smart people work for your company. Not all the smart people are in Canada. There's a layer of the software stack that is pre-competitive, but essential to your innovation. So keep that in mind. Share, rub elbows. This is a quote from a contact of mine, a contributor. He's at IEEE. He's at a Canadian cybersecurity company in Toronto, Quanthor. We have to keep sharing things. We have to show up and learn the best practices from the smartest people in the world, the smartest technologies in the world. Take those learnings back to Canada and then go and compete by making a world-class product that your customers want to use and just delights them every single day. So with that, thank you very much, AICon. Please stay in touch. It's been a pleasure.